Millionaire CEO proposed a contract marriage to a homeless girl. Her answer left him stunned. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The rain poured over New York like a curtain of glass, turning the sidewalks into rivers of light reflected from neon signs. Maya sat on the edge of the subway steps, hugging a torn backpack to her chest. Her shoes were soaked, her jacket threadbare, and her stomach empty. Hours earlier, she had been turned away from yet another diner, told they were not hiring. Tonight she had no place to sleep except the shelter that was already full. As she pressed her forehead against her knees, headlights swept across the wet pavement. A sleek black limousine stopped in front of her. For a moment she thought the driver was lost, but then the rear door opened and a tall man stepped out. He was dressed in a tailored suit that seemed untouched by the rain, his dark hair combed back, his sharp eyes focused on her. "Miss," he said in a calm, commanding tone. "I have a proposal for you." Maya blinked up at him, confused. "Do I know you?" The man extended a folder, the edges dry and crisp despite the storm. "My name is Adrian Cole. I am the CEO of Cole Enterprises. And I want you to marry me." Maya let out a startled laugh, raw and disbelieving. "Marry you? I do not even know you. I am homeless. You must be insane." Adrian did not flinch. He opened the folder, revealing a contract thick with legal pages. His voice remained steady, deliberate, like someone used to closing impossible deals. "This is not about romance. It is a contract marriage. I need a wife for appearances, for 5 major events in the coming months. In return, you will have a place to stay, financial support, and freedom when the term ends." Maya's hands trembled as she pushed the folder back toward him. "Why me? You could pay any woman in this city to play along. Why choose someone like me?" For the first time, Adrian's jaw tightened, a flicker of honesty breaking through the steel in his eyes. "Because you have nothing to gain by lying to me, and you have nothing to lose." The thunder rolled above them, echoing like a judge's gavel. Maya's breath quickened. Part of her wanted to stand up and walk away, to disappear back into the anonymous shadows of the city. But the warmth of the limousine's open door glowed like a beacon in the storm. Adrian extended a pen toward her, his voice low. "All it takes is your signature. Just think of it as survival on your terms." Maya stared at the ink waiting to be spilled across her name. She could almost feel the weight of every hungry night, every locked door, every rejection pressing against her back. And now, this man was offering a way out, an absurd, impossible way, but a way nonetheless. Her voice shook as she whispered, "If I say yes, what happens to me then?" Adrian's eyes held hers, steady and unreadable. "Then your life changes forever." The storm that night followed Maya into the next morning. She woke up in a stranger's apartment, though it was not strange in the sense of danger. It was strange because of how impossibly clean and silent it felt. Adrian Cole had given her a guest room inside one of his penthouses, a temporary place to rest until she decided what to do with the contract he had placed in her hands. She sat at the edge of the bed, staring at the polished floors, the white sheets, and the city skyline spread like glass through the wide windows. It felt unreal. Only yesterday she had been soaked on the subway steps, clutching a backpack that carried everything she owned. Now she was looking at a view people paid thousands of dollars a night to experience. The contrast pressed down on her like a weight she could not carry. Her stomach rumbled. Adrian's assistant, a composed woman named Evelyn, had brought her a tray with eggs, toast, and orange juice. Maya stared at the food for several minutes before finally eating in silence. Each bite was almost painful because she remembered how many nights she had gone without anything more than a vending machine snack. She could not shake the thought. Nothing here belonged to her. Later that morning, Adrian entered the room with the same confidence he had carried in the rain. He wore another suit, perfectly tailored, as if storms never touched him. He placed the contract on the table once more. "Have you thought about it?" Maya kept her hands folded tightly in her lap. I still do not understand. Why me? There must be thousands of women who would take this deal without hesitation. Adrian's gaze sharpened. Thousands of women would also have their own agendas. You do not. You are straightforward. I need someone who can stand beside me without pretending to play a game of power. His words stung because they highlighted her position. She was not chosen for her beauty or talent, but for her lack of advantage. She was invisible enough to be safe. Maya looked away, her eyes drifting to her worn backpack in the corner of the room. Inside were sketches on crumpled paper, reminders of the art studio she once dreamed of opening. Dreams that had collapsed with the loss of her last job and the eviction that pushed her into the streets. She spoke softly, almost ashamed to admit it. Before everything fell apart, I wanted to be an artist. I wanted a place where kids and young people could draw, paint, and forget about the weight of the world for a while. But dreams do not pay rent. Adrian studied her, silent for a moment. His tone shifted, less sharp, more measured. Dreams matter, even if they do not pay bills right away. But right now, you need stability, and so do I. He tapped the folder with one hand. This contract is stability. You will have housing, protection, and compensation. In return, you walk into 5 events as my wife. After that, you walk away with more than you had before. Maya's throat tightened. She wanted to believe there was no trap hidden in his words, yet she could not ignore the ache in her chest. Every time she imagined signing her name, she felt the shadow of her father's voice. He had always told her, "Never trade your dignity, even if the world offers you gold." She wondered what he would say now, watching her consider a marriage that was not built on love but on a legal arrangement. Adrian must have seen the hesitation in her face because he leaned closer, his voice lowering. "You think this is about me controlling you. It is not. This is about control for both of us. You gain freedom from the chaos of the streets. I gain freedom from the corporate vultures who demand to see a family man at the head of my company. It is not romance. It is survival." Maya held her breath. The word survival echoed inside her like a drumbeat. She thought of the endless lines at the shelter, of the nights she had sketched by the dim light of a street lamp, of the rejections that piled up higher than her hope. Maybe survival was enough. She looked at him with a steady, though weary gaze. "If I say yes, I need your promise. When this is over, I walk away clean. No debts, no tricks, no chains tied to your company." Adrian gave a single nod. "You have my word. This is a contract, not a cage." Her hands shook as she picked up the pen. The storm outside had cleared, but inside her chest, another storm brewed. She signed her name slowly, every letter carving itself like a question into the page. When she pushed the folder back to him, Adrian's expression did not shift much, but there was the faintest flicker in his eyes, as though her decision had unsettled him more than he expected. Maya whispered, barely audible, "What have I just done?" Adrian closed the folder with finality. "You have just changed both of our lives." The following days moved with a strange rhythm, unlike anything Maya had ever known. She was still the same woman who had been sleeping on subway steps, but now she was surrounded by walls of glass, marble floors, and people who bowed slightly every time she passed. Adrian had wasted no time once the ink dried on her signature. The contract was official, and he intended to carry it out with precision. That morning, Evelyn, his assistant, entered Maya's room carrying a garment bag and a clipboard. Her tone was polite, but firm. "We have fittings scheduled, etiquette lessons at noon, and a dinner rehearsal tonight. Your first public event will be in less than a week. We need you prepared." Maya stared at the bag as if it were something fragile. "Fittings? Etiquette?" She almost laughed. "I do not belong in any of this." Evelyn raised an eyebrow, unbothered. "Belonging is not required. Performance is." And so it began. The fitting room was larger than any apartment Maya had ever lived in. Mirrors lined every wall, reflecting her thin frame as stylists swarmed with measuring tape, pins, and fabrics that shimmered under the lights. They spoke in quick, confident tones, debating which dress would complement Adrian's presence best. One draped a gown of deep emerald across her shoulders. Another fussed with her hair, insisting it needed volume and shine. Maya stood frozen, hardly daring to move. "Relax," one stylist murmured. "You are not the first woman to feel like a stranger in silk." Maya whispered back. "I was wearing hand-me-downs yesterday." The woman gave her a small, knowing smile. "Then today you wear emerald. That is how quickly the world spins when money turns the wheel." The transformation did not stop at clothes. At noon, a stern instructor with sharp eyes and an English accent sat across from her at a long table. Silverware gleamed under the lights. He corrected her posture, the way she held a fork, the pace of her speech. "No slouching. Chin higher. Sip. Do not gulp. Smile without showing nerves." Maya tried to mimic everything, but her hands shook. The instructor rapped the table lightly. "You cannot look like a guest. You must look like you own the chair you sit in." By evening, her body ached from walking in heels that pinched her toes. Evelyn announced that they would rehearse for a charity dinner. "Think of it as a dry run," she said. "Better to make mistakes here than under the lights." Adrian entered the room then, his presence commanding as always. He looked at Maya from head to toe, his eyes lingering briefly before he gave a curt nod. "You look presentable." Maya bristled. "That is all I am to you? Presentable?" Adrian's mouth twitched, almost into a smile, but not quite. "It is a start." They practiced walking into a ballroom. Evelyn played the part of reporters, throwing questions sharply. Maya stumbled through her answers, flustered, until Adrian finally stepped forward, placing a steady hand on her back. His voice cut through the room, like steel wrapped in velvet. "This is my wife. That is all you need to know." The words caught Maya off guard. For a heartbeat, it felt less like rehearsal and more like truth. But when she glanced up at him, his expression was unreadable, all business again. Late that night, when the lights dimmed and the staff retreated, Maya stood alone in front of the mirror in her borrowed gown. She hardly recognized the woman staring back. The dirt and exhaustion of the streets were gone, replaced by painted lips and jeweled earrings. And yet, beneath it all, she was still the girl clutching sketches in a backpack, the one who dreamed of an art studio. She whispered to her reflection, "Do not forget who you are." Behind her, Adrian's voice broke the silence. He had returned quietly, his tie loosened after a long day. "The world will try to tell you who you are. Do not let it." Maya turned, startled. "Why are you saying that? You are the one turning me into someone I am not." "Oh." Adrian held her gaze, and for once there was no arrogance in his expression, only something harder to name. "No. I am giving you the tools. What you do with them is your choice." The weight of his words lingered long after he left the room. For the first time, Maya wondered if this contract marriage was more than survival. Perhaps, hidden in the ink and signatures, there was a path to something she had lost: her dignity, her voice, maybe even her future. But she also knew one truth as she touched the cool glass of the mirror. In Adrian Cole's world, every gift carried a price, and sooner or later, she would discover what it was. The week rushed forward until the night of the charity gala arrived. For Adrian Cole, it was just another battlefield of glass, chandeliers, and carefully staged smiles. For Maya, it felt like stepping onto a stage where every single person in the audience was waiting for her to trip. The limousine pulled up to the Grand Hotel, cameras flashing even before the door opened. Maya's hands were clammy in her lap. Her emerald gown clung perfectly, her hair pinned into an elegant twist, but her heart pounded loud enough to drown out the sound of the engine. Adrian leaned toward her, his voice steady and commanding. "Remember what I told you. Do not let them see your fear. They are sharks. Smile. Speak clearly. And never lower your head." Maya tried to breathe. "Easy for you to say. You were born into this world. I was eating from vending machines last month." Adrian's expression softened for a fleeting second, then proved to them that you belong here anyway. The chauffeur opened the door. Adrian stepped out first, tall and composed. Then he offered his hand to Maya. She hesitated only a moment before placing her trembling fingers into his palm. The warmth steadied her, though she would never admit it. Together, they faced the storm of flashing cameras. Inside the ballroom, the atmosphere shimmered with wealth. Crystal glasses caught the light. Conversations buzzed with names and numbers that meant nothing to her. Maya followed Adrian's lead, nodding, smiling, speaking when spoken to. But the whispers followed her like shadows. "Who is she?" Someone muttered behind a jeweled hand. "She looks out of place. Adrian Cole must be desperate." Maya's cheeks burned, but she lifted her chin higher, just as the instructor had drilled into her. She reminded herself of Adrian's words. "Do not let them see your fear." At dinner, the test came sooner than she expected. A journalist with sharp eyes and a sharper tongue leaned across the table. "Mrs. Cole, forgive me, but you do not exactly look like the women usually seen in these circles. What qualifies you to sit at this table?" The room went quiet. Even the clinking of silverware paused. Adrian's jaw tightened, ready to cut the man down with a single word. But Maya beat him to it. She straightened in her chair and met the journalist's gaze. "You are right. I do not look like I belong. I did not grow up with privilege or money. I worked in diners. I paid rent until I could not. But I learned something along the way. If wealth does not come with compassion, then it is nothing more than a number. A table like this should not be about who belongs by birth. It should be about who is willing to give back." The silence stretched, then one pair of hands began to clap. Another followed. Within moments, applause rippled across the hall. The journalist's face reddened, but Maya kept her eyes steady, refusing to look away until he did. Adrian leaned closer, his voice low but fierce with pride. "Well done." The rest of the night moved with a strange ease. People approached her, curious now, not dismissive. She laughed awkwardly at some of their jokes, stumbled over a few answers, but she no longer felt like prey. She felt seen. Later, when the gala ended and the lights dimmed, Maya stood with Adrian on the balcony overlooking the city. The cool night air brushed against her skin, carrying the distant hum of traffic. She let out a long breath she had been holding since the cameras first flashed. "I thought I would faint in there," she admitted. "You did not." Adrian handed her a glass of water instead of champagne. "You held the room. You spoke with more courage than most executives I know." Maya studied him, searching for mockery, but found none. "Why does that matter to you? This is just a contract. You do not need me to be brave." Adrian's eyes met hers, dark and unreadable under the city lights. "Courage is not part of the contract, but it is what makes you different. And difference is what this world fears most." For a moment, the sound of the city faded. It was just them, standing side by side, not CEO and contract bride, but two people who had glimpsed the truth in each other. Maya looked away quickly, her heart unsteady. She reminded herself of the lines in the contract, the rules she had agreed to. No love, no attachment, no illusions. But deep inside, a quiet seed had already been planted. And as Adrian finished his drink and led her back inside, she knew that the most dangerous part of this arrangement was not the whispers or the flashing cameras. It was the possibility that one day, she might forget it was only pretend. The gala marked only the beginning. Over the next few weeks, Maya found herself swept into a whirlwind of events she had never imagined. Charity luncheons, board meetings, and dinners with foreign investors. Each day came with a new dress, a new lesson, and a new test. At first, she stumbled often. Her shoes pinched, her words came out awkward, and the whispers followed her wherever she went. But slowly, something began to shift. She learned how to steady her breathing when cameras clicked. She learned how to smile without showing her nerves. She learned how to stand beside Adrian, not like a shadow, but like someone who belonged in the light. Yet beneath the surface, the contract rules echoed in her mind. Do not fall for him. Do not mistake kindness for love. She tried to remind herself that everything she had, the clothes, the shelter, the protection, was temporary. And still, there were moments when her guard cracked. One evening, after a long dinner with international partners, Adrian dismissed his driver and insisted on walking her through the quiet streets instead. The night was cool, the sidewalks slick from a passing drizzle. For the first time in weeks, there were no cameras, no eyes on them, just the soft glow of lampposts and the echo of their footsteps. Maya hugged her coat closer. "You did not have to walk me. I can manage." Adrian's reply was quiet but firm. "You are my wife. Even if only on paper, I do not leave you alone." The words sank deeper than she expected. She glanced at him, noticing the weariness in his eyes. He carried the weight of his empire like armor. But beneath it, she saw a man who rarely allowed himself to rest. "Do you ever get tired of all this?" she asked. Adrian looked up at the towering skyline, the glass towers reflecting the moon. "More often than I admit. People see the power, the money, the suits. They do not see the nights when silence is louder than any applause. They do not see how empty a penthouse can feel." Maya slowed her steps. For once, the walls between them seemed thinner. She spoke softly. "I know that emptiness. Mine just looked different. A park bench, a shelter, a backpack for a pillow. Emptiness does not care how much money you have." Adrian stopped walking, his gaze locking with hers. The city noise faded around them. "You understand more than anyone else has. And that is why I chose you." Her heart stumbled. She wanted to ask if he meant more than the contract, but fear held her back. Instead, she nodded, pretending the moment was smaller than it was. Later that week came another test, this time at a corporate gala filled with shareholders. Maya had been warned it would be the most difficult appearance yet. The shareholders had always demanded proof of Adrian's stability, his reliability, and above all, his ability to secure the future of the company. She walked into the hall on Adrian's arm, her heart hammering. Questions flew from every corner, sharp and probing. Is this marriage real? Can she handle the pressure? Why her? Adrian prepared to answer, but Maya surprised herself. She stepped forward and spoke clearly, her voice carrying across the hall. "This marriage may have started with a contract, but that does not mean it is without purpose. I stand by Adrian because I see the man who works when no one is watching. I see the leader who cares about more than profit. If that is not stability, I do not know what is." The room fell silent. For a long moment, even the doubters had no reply. Then, slowly, applause began to rise. Adrian's hand brushed against hers, steady and strong. When the night ended and the guests departed, Maya found herself once again on a balcony, the city lights glittering below. Adrian joined her, loosening his tie. "You handled yourself well tonight," he said. Maya gave a small laugh. "I felt like my knees would give out the entire time." Courage does not mean the absence of fear," Adrian replied softly. "It means standing even when your knees shake." She turned toward him, and for the first time, she saw not the CEO, not the contract holder, but the man behind it all. The distance between them felt thinner than ever, as if one step could close it, but she reminded herself of the rules. No love, no illusions. She turned away, hiding the storm inside her chest. Still, as Adrian stood beside her in silence, Maya could not escape the truth. The contract had given her shelter, but it had also given her something far more dangerous: hope. And hope, she feared, was the one thing the contract had never allowed. The more Maya stepped into Adrian's world, the more she realized that the rules of their contract were far harder to follow than she expected. What was supposed to be simple appearances began to blur into something else. It was in the stolen glances across crowded rooms, in the way his hand found hers at the exact moment her nerves began to break, and in the quiet nights when the mansion was so silent that only their voices filled the air. One night, after another exhausting event, Maya found herself unable to sleep. She wandered onto the rooftop terrace, the city glittering beneath her like a sea of stars. She carried her sketchbook, the only remnant of her old life. Her pencil moved across the page, tracing the outline of the skyline. "You draw!" Adrian's voice came from behind her. Startled, she turned. He was standing by the door, his jacket removed, his shirt sleeves rolled up. He looked less like the untouchable CEO and more like a man who simply wanted air. "I used to dream of having my own studio," Maya admitted. "A place where anyone could come and paint, no matter how poor they were. Art was the only thing that ever made me feel free." "Oh," Adrian walked closer, his eyes on the sketchbook. "It suits you. You bring life to empty pages, the way some people bring light into empty rooms." Maya lowered her gaze, her chest tightening. Compliments from him were rare, and this one felt dangerously sincere. "You should not say things like that. It makes it harder to remember. This is only temporary." His expression shifted, a shadow of something raw flickering behind his control. And what if I do not want it to be temporary? The words hung between them, heavy and dangerous. Maya's heart thudded, but before she could respond, Adrian looked away, as if he had revealed more than he intended. Days later, the tension between them became impossible to ignore. They attended a shareholders' retreat at a coastal resort. Cameras were not allowed, but the scrutiny was worse, because it came from those who held Adrian's empire in their hands. At dinner, a shareholder pressed him relentlessly. "Coal Enterprises needs a steady air, Adrian. This marriage of yours, can it be trusted? Or is it just a performance?" Maya felt the weight of every eye on her. Her instinct was to shrink back, but then she remembered his words. "Do not let them see your fear." She reached for Adrian's hand under the table, her voice firm as she answered before he could. "It is real enough for me to stand beside him in every room filled with doubt. And it is real enough for him to risk his reputation on me. That is more truth than most marriages I have seen." A murmur of surprise rippled through the room. Adrian's eyes locked on hers, gratitude burning quietly behind them. Later that night, they stood on the balcony of their suite, the ocean dark and endless before them. Adrian poured himself a glass of scotch, but his hands lingered on the railing. "You defended me when you did not have to," he said quietly. Maya wrapped her arms around herself against the sea breeze. "I did it because it was the truth. You gave me a home when I had none. You gave me a chance when no one else cared. That means something to me." He turned toward her, his gaze unguarded for once. "And you gave me something I did not know I needed. Someone who sees me. Not just the company or the money." The silence stretched, filled only by the sound of waves crashing far below. Adrian stepped closer, his voice dropping. "Tell me, Maya, if this was not a contract, would you still choose me?" Her breath caught. The question pierced through every wall she had built. She wanted to say yes, but fear wrapped around her throat. She remembered the rule she had repeated to herself. Do not love him. But the truth trembled inside her, threatening to break free. She looked up at him, eyes shining. "That is the problem, Adrian. I am afraid I already have." Dodo. The confession slipped into the night like a secret that could never be taken back. Adrian's hand reached for hers, his grip strong, almost desperate. For the first time since the ink dried on their contract, Maya knew they had both crossed the line. The marriage was no longer pretend. It was becoming real. And with that came a danger neither of them could ignore. The night after Maya's quiet confession, a storm brewed that neither of them could control. What began as whispers soon erupted into headlines. An anonymous source leaked photographs of Maya before the contract. Images of her curled on subway benches, her clothes torn, her hair unkempt. The story spread like fire. Adrian Cole's wife is a fraud, a homeless girl disguised as a bride. The board of directors demanded an emergency meeting. Adrian arrived with Maya by his side, though she could feel every pair of eyes slicing into her. The men and women seated around the polished table did not bother to lower their voices. "She is a liability. This marriage was reckless from the start. If this contract was a stunt, the damage will be immeasurable." Maya's throat tightened, but she stayed silent. Every instinct told her to shrink away, but Adrian's hand rested firmly on hers under the table. When the accusations grew louder, he stood, his voice cutting through the noise like a blade. "You think she is a liability because of where she came from. I see her as the only one in this room brave enough to speak truth when all of you hide behind numbers. She is my wife. Question me if you want, but do not insult her again." His words silenced the board, but not the storm outside the room. The media painted her as a gold digger, a street rat climbing on the shoulders of a billionaire. Paparazzi crowded the gates of the mansion, shouting cruel questions. That night, Maya locked herself in the guest room, tears stinging her eyes. She whispered to her reflection, "I never asked for this. I never wanted to be a scandal." The door opened without warning, and Adrian entered, his expression hard. "Do not believe their lies. You stood by me when they doubted everything. Now it is my turn to stand by you." She turned toward him, her voice breaking. "But it was only supposed to be a contract. I never wanted to ruin your empire." Adrian stepped closer, his tone fierce. "An empire built on money alone is nothing. But if it stands on truth, it survives anything. "You are not ruining me, Maya. You are reminding me why I fight." In that moment, she realized the battle was no longer about survival. It was about trust, about whether their bond could withstand the weight of a world determined to break it. And as Adrian pulled her into his arms, the roar of the outside world faded, leaving only the certainty of his voice against her hair. "They can call it whatever they want, but I will not let anyone take you from me." The scandal did not fade overnight. Rumors multiplied, and rival executives moved quickly to exploit Adrian's supposed weakness. At the height of the chaos, a trusted advisor delivered the harshest blow of all. A petition to nullify Adrian's position as CEO, citing instability brought by his questionable marriage. The pressure was suffocating. Maya begged him one evening, her voice trembling. "End this, Adrian. Release me from the contract. If I disappear, the board will calm down. You will save everything you built." Adrian's eyes burned with resolve. "Do you think my company matters more than you? Do you think I would trade you for their approval? No, Maya, I will not." The following week, the shareholders' meeting arrived. The ballroom was filled with journalists, investors, and critics, waiting to witness Adrian Cole's downfall. Maya sat in the front row, her hands cold, her heart pounding. Adrian stepped onto the stage, tall and composed. Cameras flashed. He did not begin with numbers or graphs. Instead, he raised the contract that once bound them. With steady hands, he tore it in half. The sound echoed across the hall. "Yes, this marriage began as an arrangement," he said, his voice carrying strength. "But in standing with Maya, I found more honesty than in any deal I have ever signed. If leadership is measured by wealth alone, then perhaps you should take my seat. But if leadership means courage, loyalty, and truth, then you already know why she stands with me." For a moment, silence held the room. Then a wave of applause erupted, surprising even Maya. Investors who had doubted him rose to their feet. The tide had shifted, not because of contracts or power, but because Adrian chose her in front of the world. Maya's eyes filled with tears. In that instant, she understood he had not only defended her, he had chosen love over the empire, and by doing so, he had saved them both. 1 year later, the world looked different for both of them. The mansion that once felt like a prison of marble now carried laughter and light. The woman who once sat shivering on subway steps was now hosting art workshops in a bright community space downtown. And the man who once believed power alone defined him had learned that love was the foundation that held everything together. Maya walked through the gallery she had built with Adrian's support. Canvases lined the walls, painted by people who had once been told their voices did not matter. Children, veterans, single mothers, workers who came after long shifts, all had found a place where they could put color on canvas and see their worth reflected back. At the entrance, a plaque bore the name of the project, Open Hands Studio, founded by Maya Cole. That evening, Adrian entered the gallery quietly. He wore no suit, only a simple shirt. His eyes warm as he watched her help. A young woman mix paint. When she finally noticed him, her smile spread, soft and real. "You have been hiding here again?" he teased gently. "This is where I feel alive," she replied, wiping her hands on her apron. "It is not about me anymore. It is about giving others what I once needed." Adrian stepped closer, holding something small in his hand. It was a velvet box. Her breath caught as he opened it to reveal a simple gold ring, unadorned except for one detail. Inside the band, engraved in delicate script, were the words, "No contract. Just us." Her eyes blurred with tears. "Adrian." He took her hand, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "The first time I asked you to marry me, I offered survival. Tonight, I ask you again, but this time, I offer forever. No terms, no signatures, only love." The gallery fell silent as those nearby noticed. Adrian sank to one knee, the man who once commanded boardrooms now kneeling with absolute sincerity. Maya pressed her hands to her mouth, her heart racing. She remembered every night of hunger, every rejection, every whisper that she did not belong. And now, here was the man who had once seen her as a contract, showing her that she was his choice, not his obligation. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, firmer. "Yes, Adrian Cole. 1,000 times, yes." Applause broke out across the gallery as their friends and community cheered. Adrian rose and slipped the ring onto her finger, pulling her into his arms. For a long moment, nothing else existed but the warmth of their embrace. Later that night, as they walked hand in hand through the quiet city streets, Maya leaned her head against his shoulder. "It is strange," she murmured. "The contract that was supposed to be temporary gave me the life I never thought I would have." Adrian kissed the top of her head. "Because love was never meant to be written in clauses. It was meant to be lived." And with the city lights glowing around them, they walked forward into a future no longer bound by signatures, but by the promise of hearts that had finally chosen each other.